Walk in the darkness and serve the light. All things are empty, all things are allowed. When the assassin god travels to the Douluo continent, he will use the dagger in his hand to cut through this pitch-black night. And let's see Gu Chen holding a gluttony and wearing a Lingguang cloak, piercing the entire world. P.S. Synopsis fans, do not enter with any fanatics. P.S. The author promises that this book will never be a eunuch. P.S. The author has completed the work. Go and invite the mountain and see Douluo. Keywords of the novel. Assassin of Douluo becomes a god without pop-ups. Complete collection download of Assassin of Douluo becomes a god TXT. Latest chapter reading of Assassin of Douluo becomes a god. Chapter 1. Children in Prison, recommended, collected. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Children in Prison, recommended, collected. Tiendo Empire, Stoke Town, Bottom Prison. The warden carried his hands behind his back and arrogantly scolded his guards. His mother, another one, died. Didn't I say that prisoners should not be locked up with that little monster, a bunch of rubbish. He looked at the corpse with a cut neck in the shadow and cursed loudly. The boss was angry, and everyone trembled all over. A prison guard, bold and innocent, said, "Boss, there really isn't a cell left." Seeing his subordinates retort, the warden raised his whip and wanted to greet him. Suddenly, a cold and gloomy aura made him stand still, trembling all over. Turning around, just as he was about to curse, when he saw the visitor clearly, he trembled with fat and knelt directly on the ground, saying, "Big Lord, why did you come?" I saw a man wearing a black cloak, unable to see his face clearly, and emitting an extremely cold aura all over his body standing in front of him. The adult's voice was like a chainsaw cutting through wood, making one feel numb. "Come and take a look as you pass by this place." After speaking, he walked into the prison without waiting for the warden's consent. "Sir, who is this from?" The prison guard looked at the back of the black-robed man, unable to suppress his curiosity, and asked. The warden said mysteriously, "Do you know about the elder token of the Martial Soul Hall? The incomplete humanoid pattern on it is this one." Upon hearing this, the prison guard was shocked. Although he had never seen the elder token symbolizing supreme power with his own eyes, he was still aware of the pattern on it. When will characters of this level also appear in their prisons? This mysterious man is the right arm of the Pope of the Martial Soul Hall, a ghost. The warden dared not neglect, patted the dust on his knee, and followed him with a thud. Gue Douluo looked at the prisoners in the surrounding cells, and the cold and damp atmosphere made him feel incredibly comfortable. It is precisely because of this that ghosts have developed a fetish. Love to burrow into cold and damp places, such as sewers and prisons. He, who had just completed His Highness the Pope's mission, was preparing to return to the Hall of Martial Souls when the sun's exposure made him feel uncomfortable all over. As he passed by this border town, Gue Douluo decided to come and take a stroll in this prison. Douluo stopped in his tracks, as if something inconspicuous in the corner had caught his attention. At the deepest part of this prison corridor, there is an extremely sturdy cell, and what makes Gue Douluo curious is that there is actually a child locked in the cell. This child. He looked at the warden following behind him and asked coldly. "Sir, don't be confused by this kid's appearance." The warden quickly said. "This is a murderer who killed more than 10 people overnight." The warden felt lingering fear. As soon as these words were spoken, Gue Douluo looked at the children in the prison cell with great interest. The child huddled in the corner, dirty all over, like a stray wild cat. But those eyes deeply attracted Gue Douluo. Those are a pair of dead gray pupils, with no trace of emotion in them. This is definitely not a child's eyes. More like a lone wolf, a ferocious beast that has eaten countless people. "What's his name?" Gue Douluo spoke up and asked. "Reply to your excellency, this kid's name is Han Xiao." The warden quickly said. Han Xiao seemed unaware that someone was watching him outside the iron fence. The mosquitoes and flies in the cell were far away from him, and the mice had already emptied their nests. They dared not be his neighbors anymore, as if extremely afraid of the breath on the young man's body. The dim chandelier was about to fall, making it difficult to see the full picture of the child. A child who killed more than 10 people. Ghost Douluo slowly spoke out, obviously not quite believing. The warden quickly lowered his head and trembled, saying, "I dare not hide it. This kid is an orphan and has been taken care of by a woman in town, but..." At this point, the warden hesitated to speak. "Keep going. The woman was favored by a wealthy gentry in the town and would rather die than comply. The gentry accidentally pushed her onto the stone steps and died." Gue Douluo's emotionless voice fluctuated a bit. "Are you saying that this kid killed all the gentry's family in a fit of anger because of the woman's death?" The warden nodded quickly and continued, "Not only that, but he also killed a soul master." "Impossible." Ghost Douluo did not hesitate at all and directly refuted. "This kid, judging by his age, hasn't even awakened his martial soul, so he can't be the opponent of a soul master. A 5-year-old child killed more than 10 adults, including a soul master. This is simply a huge joke. Although the other party is just a landlord and can at most hire a soul master with a white soul ring, even so, there is still an enormous gap between the soul master and ordinary people who cannot cultivate. Sir, do I dare to deceive you?" The warden wanted to cry without tears. As he spoke, he searched aside for a while and handed a sharpened wooden stick up. "This kid used this wooden stick to kill the wealthy gentry's family." Gue Douluo held the wooden stick in his hand and carefully observed it. Although the surface was calm, his heart stirred up waves. This is an ordinary wooden stick, and it is not long, about the length of a forearm. At this length, killing someone is even more difficult than reaching the sky. The weapons and martial souls commonly used by soul masters are mostly swords and spears, with a length at least twice that of this wooden stick. As the old saying goes, 1 inch long and 1 inch strong, using this kind of thing to kill may not even touch hair. What Ghost Douluo had to believe was that there were still dried blood stains hanging on this wooden stick. "Open the door." Ghost Douluo suddenly spoke up. "No, sir." The warden was shocked and quickly said. "Why did he leave Han Xiao alone in a cell?" "That's because all the prisoners who were locked up with him, without exception, provoked him and were all killed. This seemingly weak child seems to contain an incredibly terrifying demon within." "What? Are you still worried that this kid will kill me?" Gue Douluo sneered. Upon hearing these words, the warden finally realized. The adult in front of me is one of the highest beings in the world. How could you be afraid of a little brat who hasn't even awakened his martial soul? The iron door creaked and was pushed open heavily. Gue Douluo walked up to Han Xiao and looked at the child in front of him with great interest. It seems that due to long-term malnutrition, the child has become so thin that only skin and bones remain. It's hard to imagine that this fragile child could kill more than 10 people. Gue Douluo frowned as he saw Han Xiao seemingly unaware of his arrival and said, "Han Xiao, why did you kill someone? If you want to kill, then kill." Han Xiao only then noticed the man in front of him and spoke. Upon hearing his voice, Gue Douluo finally believed that he was really a child in front of him, and his grandmother's voice was very tender. But how could these 5 words be spoken from a child's mouth? "Do you know that you're about to die?" Gue Douluo said lightly. "Killing more than 10 people resulted in the death penalty. If I die, I'll die. I've exchanged more than 10 lives, not a loss." Han Xiao's face was very calm, and he didn't have any fear at all. "Ha ha ha. Who would have thought that Ghost Douluo, who has always been like a ghost, would burst out laughing?" But his laughter was just too unpleasant to listen to. "Interesting, really interesting." Han Xiao completely aroused the interest of Gue Douluo. "Just because of one woman, you slaughtered more than 10 lives. Ghost Douluo asked at the exit. Han Xiao looked up and looked at Douluo. At this moment, his tender little face was exposed to the air. His facial features were cold and indifferent, as if he had rejected people from 1,000 miles away, and now he has a lifeless face that is disgusted with the world. She gave me a reward. Compensation. What compensation? Douluo finds it even more interesting. What kind of compensation can a peasant woman pay to kill someone? Besides my own body, upon careful consideration, there's nothing else, right? Han Xiao slowly felt into his clothes and pulled out a mantu as hard as a stone. Just because of a mantu. Douluo's eyebrows and eyes, hidden under his black robe, were twitching. He seemed to be able to hear his heart beating wildly. There was no emotion in Han Xiao's voice. Not 1, but 5 years of mantu. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Prison Break. New books for recommendation and collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Prison Break. New books for recommendation and collection. As the top-ranked assassin in the Assassin Temple, Han Xiao, codenamed Tao Tai, can be said to have frightened all industry insiders. But it was this assassin, who had no history, who was jealous of his talents and ultimately died of a terminal illness that medicine could not conquer. However, after his death, Han Xiao did not return to nothingness, but crossed over to this continent. For 5 years, he has been cautious and observing the situation here. As an orphan, he owes his life to that woman who doesn't even know her name. The woman sent him mantu for 5 years before Han Xiao could survive. But on that day, the woman didn't come for a long time. Until Han Xiao found the woman's body in the wilderness, as well as the mantu that she had covered in her heart. The woman died while delivering food to him. Han Xiao was very calm and buried this unnamed but mother-like woman. It wasn't until the end that he realized that women were also orphans. So Han Xiao killed someone. If it's too expensive for a blacksmith to make a dagger, then make it yourself with a wooden stick. It's quite convenient. More than 10 people, with extremely miserable faces, had their temples pierced one after another, forever frozen in their frightened expressions. This was his first time killing someone after arriving in Douluo continent, and in the end, due to his weak body, he fainted in the sea of blood. After waking up, he arrived at this gloomy and terrifying dungeon. However, it is simply impossible for a prison of this scale to trap Han Xiao. In his past life, he simulated the escape methods of hundreds of prisons, but due to his terrifying assassination ability, he never used them again. He had already figured out the shift change time of these prison guards, dug a secret passage, and escaped tonight. But what's going on with this old man in front of me now? His keen sixth sense told him that this person's strength was immeasurable. We must not let this old man ruin our escape plan. 5 years of mantu. Douluo chewed on these words, not knowing what he was thinking. At this moment, his heart was a bit complicated. It doesn't seem appropriate to describe him as cold-blooded. But being able to kill more than 10 people overnight, even without blinking an eye, yet cruel and terrifying. After thinking for a moment, Douluo made a decision. He asked lightly, Han Xiao, are you willing to come back to the Martial Soul Hall with me? Martial Soul Hall. He wants to take himself away. Han Xiao's pupils narrowed and he didn't speak. Without knowing the opponent's strength, Han Xiao would not act rashly unless absolutely necessary. Crown, this. The warden opened his mouth, feeling a bit embarrassed. Do you have any objections? Douluo slowly turned his head, his voice extremely eerie. The imposing demeanor of the titled Douluo instantly frightened the warden, who even knelt down directly. Big. My lord, how dare I? Ghost Douluo wants people, how could it be under the control of his warden? Very strong. Feeling the terrifying aura emanating from Douluo's body, Han Xiao was secretly shocked. This black-robed person is stronger than any expert he has ever seen in his past life. Han Xiao's heart gradually sank, and his muscles tightened all over. Han Xiao, are you willing? Douluo turned his head to look at Han Xiao, but the latter did not answer and continued to ask. He looked down at the boy and was extremely proud when he talked about the 3 words, Martial Soul Hall. If it were any death row inmate, they would be extremely grateful and even kneel down. But Han Xiao's words almost caused others to collapse. I refuse. The 3 words he uttered were very clear. Cough, what did you say? I said I refused. Han Xiao repeated it again. This time, even the warden and guards looked at him with an incredulous expression on their faces. The once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to the Martial Soul Hall was unexpectedly rejected by someone. Even more comical is that the person who refuses is still a dead prisoner. Have you figured it out? Douluo's voice carried anger. This was his first time feeling compassion, but he didn't expect it to be appreciated yet. I am very clear-headed. Han Xiao spoke up, his mind highly focused. As long as the black-robed person in front of him dares to make a move, he can react instantly in a second. Douluo stared closely at Han Xiao without making a sound, and the cramped room air seemed to have solidified. Han Xiao, if you can't go back to the Martial Soul Hall, it's up to you. Don't forget your current identity. Douluo's voice is extremely eerie. A death row inmate doesn't have much choice. Tie him up for me. Douluo looked at the warden and said coldly. This. The warden felt a bit embarrassed and secretly looked at Han Xiao's cold eyes, his chubby body trembling. He could only grit his teeth and summon the prison guards to surround Han Xiao. If an uninformed outsider sees a group of people showing a fierce expression towards a child, they will surely be shocked and lose their teeth. What surprised everyone was that Han Xiao moved first. He was like a crazy little beast, stomping on the ground with both feet and his muscles exploding. That frail body was now like an engine running wildly. Han Xiao's first target is Ghost Douluo. Kill the strongest first. No matter how strong the opponent is, it is impossible to expect Han Xiao to take action first under the encirclement of more than 10 people. Han Xiao's torso swings extremely small and his speed is terrifying. How could he still look like a skinny child? Even more terrifying was that his running and footsteps made no sound. This is the beginner's foundation for assassins, killing silently. Douluo turned his back to Han Xiao, seemingly unaware of his distress and remained motionless. Han Xiao clenched his fist in his right hand and made a dive. His fist bounced out and stabbed directly towards Douluo's waist. Kidney strike, a basic combat skill with great lethality. Once hit, mild cases may urinate and bleed, while severe cases may die. Got it. Han Xiao's cold pupils gleamed brightly. But to everyone's surprise, this punch went blank, and Douluo turned into a shadow. Interesting. The voice of Douluo came from behind him in a leisurely manner. When? Han Xiao didn't even catch Douluo's movements, how did he appear behind him? And at this moment, Ghost Douluo also became interested. He wants to see how this little wolf actually killed more than 10 people. Han Xiao's heart was cold and he was not shocked for too long. He quickly bent down, turned his head suddenly, and sprinkled a handful of sand on Douluo's face. Nowadays, there are no suitable weapons, and we can only rely on these street techniques to seize the opportunity. Douluo didn't expect Han Xiao to use such a cunning move for a moment, but he didn't realize it and was blinded by the sand. No matter how high your martial arts are, you are afraid of moves. Son of a bitch. He cursed loudly and directly released his martial soul. Yellow, yellow, purple, purple, black, 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 terrifying soul ring configurations float around the body. And Han Xiao's movements were not at all sluggish, incredibly coherent, his body swayed, and he turned and rushed towards the warden who had been peeping. "Help me under the crown." The warden didn't hesitate at all, turned around and ran. He has witnessed the terror of this little devil with his own eyes. Unexpectedly, Han Zhao's pursuit of him came to a sudden halt, and he turned around and rushed towards the secret passage he had dug. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Fighting Ghost Douluo, Han Zhao's War Spirit Burning. New book request. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Fighting Ghost Douluo, Han Zhao's War Spirit Burning. New books for recommendation and collection. At this moment, he was like a nimble cat, dodging the prison guards who were rushing towards him. As long as you can get into that narrow secret passage, you can get rid of the pursuit. Guo Douluo was secretly shocked. This kid actually intends to confuse me with his footsteps. From the beginning, he had no intention of fighting himself, with only one goal. That's prison break. This makes Guo Douluo couldn't help but sigh. This child's combat experience is really rich and terrifying. Unfortunately, in the face of soul power, no matter how rich it is, it will eventually be crushed. Under the blessing of ghost martial souls, the speed of Ghost Douluo is incredibly terrifying. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Han Xiao, ready to hold him down. How could it be? Han Xiao was greatly shocked. He accurately calculated that even the king of sprinting could not blink in front of him at just a short distance. And the speed of Douluo has obviously exceeded human limits by too much. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Han Zhao's fists were as strong as the wind, with each blow piercing towards the most vulnerable part of Guo Douluo. And Ghost Douluo clearly planned to play with Han Xiao, evading with ease, and Han Zhao's fist did not touch a single penny. After all, it's a title Douluo. If you can't even dodge the fist of a malnourished child like Han Xiao, don't mess around. Han Xiao was panting heavily, and a series of attacks wiped out his physical strength. Is this body still too weak? As the rabbit rose and fell, Han Xiao jumped into the crowd, grabbed the branch that had been sharpened by himself, and charged towards Ghost Douluo again. The ordinary wooden stick in hand now seemed to have become the sharpest weapon. He held a wooden stick in his hand and stabbed at Douluo's lower abdomen. The speed is so fast that the wooden stick turns into a phantom. However, Ghost Douluo has no intention of continuing to play. His hand was faster, tightly gripping Han Zhao's wrist and imprisoning it on the ground. After all, it's just a matter of naming Douluo and solving a 5-year-old child's problem with just one finger. It's over, little one. Ghost Douluo said in a gloomy tone, feeling a bit helpless. He originally wanted to bring Han Xiao back to the martial soul hall for cultivation, but now his posture is like he's going to eat him. However, this aroused a desire for conquest in his heart. The more difficult a dog is to tame, the more terrifying it becomes after being tamed. However, at this moment, a strange smile appeared on the corner of Han Zhao's mouth. Taking advantage of Douluo's momentary unpreparedness, his palm bent at an incredible angle and escaped Douluo's control. And at some point, an additional diamond-shaped stone appeared in Han Zhao's palm, and with a flick of his hand, it flew directly towards the chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Due to the aging chandelier, which was on the verge of collapse for many years, this stone piece became the last straw to crush the camel. The chandelier fell vertically, and Douluo happened to be right below. With a loud bang, hit directly. Are you going to die this time? Han Xiao breathed a sigh of relief and secretly thought to himself. The smoke slowly dissipated. The man in front of him stared at him fiercely like a ghost, and the huge chandelier hit him as if nothing had happened. Han Xiao was completely shocked at this moment. How could this be possible? Even a fierce tiger is still seriously injured. I'm going to kill you. Douluo was completely angry. As a titled Douluo, he was constantly constrained by a child, which he couldn't bear. But just as he was about to take action, he looked at Han Zhao's expressionless pupils and calmed down. Douluo seemed to have an extremely bizarre idea that this child's future achievements would never be worse than him. How did it happen? Han Xiao spoke calmly, without any fear, as if it was not himself who was about to be killed. It is obvious that he does not understand the superhuman physique of Douluo. You don't know? Douluo asked somewhat strangely. Each person in Douluo continent awakens their martial soul at the age of 6, and their future is closely related to their own martial soul. But the child in front of him didn't know the martial soul. Upon careful consideration, Han Xiao wasn't much shocked when he saw the 9 soul rings. After all, born in such a border town, there are few soul masters, and even if there are, they are still weak chickens among the weak ones. And most of the awakened villagers will only mistake their martial souls for agricultural tools by Han Xiao. In this world, everyone will have their own martial soul. If the martial soul is suitable for cultivation, they may become a soul master, the most noble profession in Douluo continent. Ghost Douluo released Han Xiao and explained to him, soul masters have their own soul power. According to the strength of their soul power, they are divided into 10 levels. For each level increase, they will obtain a new soul ring. Speaking, Douluo displayed his 9 soul rings and continued, when you reach level 90, you can also obtain 9 soul rings. He secretly scrutinized Han Xiao's face, with 9 soul rings surrounding him. The latter's face remained calm, and he secretly felt a little disappointed. So, you're currently at level 90. After pondering for a moment, Han Xiao asked. No, level 91. Ghost Douluo emphasizes the latter half of the sentence. After speaking, Douluo seemed to want to capture a hint of admiration on Han Xiao's face. But to his surprise, Han Xiaoxi didn't give him face and still had a cold expression on her face. After listening to Douluo's explanation, Han Xiao felt relieved. He is facing the most powerful person in the world, and the other person doesn't seem to have too much malice towards him. Han Xiao was obviously very interested in martial souls and asked, can I also have my own martial soul? Of course, everyone will have their own martial soul. Douluo nodded and said. And where is the martial soul hall? Han Xiao thought for a moment and asked. When it comes to the martial soul hall, Douluo's voice adds a sense of pride. The martial soul hall is the holy temple that all soul masters in the mainland aspire to. In the martial soul hall, your strength will be greatly improved, where experts are like clouds and soul masters are everywhere. Upon hearing these words, Han Xiao felt a little tempted. He could feel the tremendous changes after Ghost Douluo released his martial soul. And I also misunderstood the intention of Douluo, but I didn't expect him to want to take me as his disciple. Would you like to follow me to the martial soul hall? Douluo saw that Han Xiao was no longer running away and asked. He really didn't want to give up on the young man in front of him and threw his last olive branch. With your strength, although I cannot guarantee that you will eventually become a title Douluo, you can also become a top player in this continent, Douluo said firmly. Upon hearing these words, Han Xiao fell silent, his heart beating excitedly. As a top assassin, Han Xiao yearns for power. And he made unremitting efforts, combined with his alien-like talent, ultimately reached the peak. The high altitude was unbearable, and the loneliness of the strong made Han Xiao lose his goal. Upon arriving at Douluo continent, Han Xiao faced a brand new challenge. Han Xiao said 3 words. I am willing. Now he has a burning gaze and a burning sense of war. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Perfect Woman, Seeking Recommendation, Seeking Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The Perfect Woman, Seeking Recommendation, Seeking Collection. Han Xiao stood silently, gazing quietly at the low mound in front of him. A wordless monument stands quietly, seemingly expressing inner sorrow. Douluo stood in the distance, his gaze hidden in his cloak fixed on Han Xiao, unsure of what he was thinking. The two had originally planned to depart today, but to their surprise, Han Xiao said there was still one thing to attend to before leaving. What Douluo didn't expect was that he would come here. Han Xiao carefully placed the flowers in his hand in front of the grave bag and turned towards Douluo. Let's go. His face was very cold, even the knowledgeable ghost Douluo didn't know what was hidden in that green and shy little face. The two of them walked towards the direction of the Martial Soul Hall. However, after a while, he arrived outside the Martial Soul City. Han Xiao raised his head and looked at the majestic gate, his eyes burning. I'll take you to meet an extremely important person later. Whether or not I can stay in this Martial Soul City depends on her expression. Don't cause trouble. Ghost Douluo said in a gloomy tone. Is the person in his mouth the owner of this Martial Soul Hall? Han Xiao thought to himself. In fact, Ghost Douluo doesn't need to be so troublesome to recommend someone to join the Martial Soul Hall. After all, under the Pope, his authority is also considered the highest. But Douluo has a different idea. He plans to personally take Han Xiao as his disciple. Since that's the case, it's hard to justify not meeting with the Pope. Ghost. Elder Ghost. The Soul Master of the Gatekeeper trembled with fear when he saw that the newcomer was Ghost Douluo, afraid to be careless. Douluo nodded and led Han Xiao inside. Han Xiao, who had just entered the Martial Soul City, everything around him was novel. And the Soul Masters passing by, seeing Ghost Douluo, all looked frightened and respectfully greeted him. Even their gaze at Han Xiao became somewhat peculiar. Why are you not afraid of me? At this moment, Ghost Douluo suddenly spoke up and asked. Why be afraid? Han Xiao was a bit puzzled. The people of this Martial Soul City are all afraid of me because I am a ghost. Douluo spoke in a gloomy voice. Due to his martial soul and personality, Ghost Douluo is no less terrifying than the fierce ghost in horror movies. I enjoy dealing with ghosts. Han Xiao gave a rare grin and spoke. He is not dealing with ghosts, but with the Grim Reaper. The souls that died under his command are even more incalculable. He danced under the watchful eyes of the Grim Reaper every time he assassinated. Jia jia jia. Douluo suddenly laughed. It seemed that he realized the unpleasant laughter, but he closed his mouth wisely and said, let's go. Silent all the way, the two walked into the most prominent building of the Martial Soul Hall. And Han Xiao depicted the roads and buildings he had walked all the way in his mind like sketches. After all, as an assassin, one cannot trust others lightly. If one day one wants to escape this city, they can also create the best route. I want to see Your Excellency the Pope. The two of them stopped in front of an extremely magnificent gate, and across from Ghost Douluo was the well-behaved attendant Mori Dao. The maid saw that the visitor was Ghost Douluo, and her face was not afraid. She smiled and said, Ghost Douluo, it's a coincidence that the Pope is not here at this moment. He won't be back until dusk. Why don't you come in and wait? After pondering for a moment, Douluo said, it's okay. He turned his head to look at Han Xiao, who was standing straight in place, and waved at him, Kid, come here. Take it. He searched for a while before finally taking out a bulging bag from under his black robe and handing it to Han Xiao. Han Xiao glanced at the heavy bag, and golden coins were about to emerge. There are many good things in Wuhuan City. Go take a stroll and come back before dusk. Ghost Douluo said ominously. This operation caught the surprised gaze of the maid beside her. She looked at Han Xiao without any trace, having never seen this green face before. A person who can be treated like this by Ghost Douluo can be counted with just one hand in the entire Martial Soul Hall. Han Xiao didn't hesitate and nodded to accept it, then turned around and left. Following the stairs, Han Xiao took out a gold coin and played with it in his hand. The gold coin seemed to have spirituality, rolling happily between Han Xiao's knuckles. In his past life, he had a hobby of collecting various styles of gold coins. Various types of gold coins filled his collection cabinet, including priceless ancient gold coins. When he's free, Han Xiao likes to play with gold coins on his knuckles. Han Xiao was very satisfied. The feel of the golden soul coin in this continent was similar to his favorite florin gold coin in his previous life. Warm and heavy, most suitable for playing with. At this moment, the rhythmic sound of high heels came from below the stairs. Tada tada, the sound is clear and crisp, making people daydream endlessly. Two women, one big and one small, walked towards me. The younger girl was directly attracted by the rolling gold coins in Han Xiao's hand, staring at them without blinking. Both sides met, and Han Xiao did not look at the little girl who was staring at him without blinking. His gaze was completely drawn to another woman. That woman has a hot figure, with just the right ups and downs, and her skin is more beautiful than snow. She can be confident without looking at her face. She is definitely a great beauty. And what is even more suffocating is that perfect and flawless pretty face, which is simply favored by God, with every point just right. That noble and magnificent robe highlighted a sense of nobility and distance. Two women, one big and one small, clearly noticed Han Xiao and met him at the staircase. The woman looked at him expressionlessly, and Han Xiao did the same. Seeing the little girl's gaze fixed on the gold coin in his hand, Han Xiao mercilessly grabbed it back into his palm and put it in his wallet. If neither side speaks, they will pass each other by. Bold. At this moment, the little girl spoke up. Seeing the teacher not greeting, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" The little girl seemed a bit annoyed by Han Xiao's deliberate act of collecting the coins and asked loudly. Han Xiao stopped and turned his head to look at her expressionlessly. The little girl shrank back in fear of Han Xiao's gaze, but then remembered someone supporting her, straightening her chest, and glaring at him fiercely. There are many rules in this bullshit martial soul hall. Han Xiao frowned secretly in his heart. In his past life, when others saw him, they would all hide far away. How could there be a reason for him to take the initiative to say hello? Although he is a top assassin, Han Xiao also has obvious shortcomings. He never greets others. Being under the eaves, he had to bow his head. He still remembered Gue Douluo's warning, his brain overloaded, and he thought about how to say hello. I still remember living in Paris for a while before, where people seemed to praise each other when they met. For example, today's clothes are very beautiful, and the hair is very beautiful. After a while, Han Xiao finally choked out 4 words. You look very nice. After saying these words, he turned around and left without leaving a trace. This statement instantly made the little girl dumbfounded, pointing at Han Xiao who was far away, so angry that she couldn't say a word. Even the woman who has always had an icy face opened her mouth, somewhat surprised. She is not overly confident, but knows that she is indeed beautiful. But there is no one on this continent who dares to boast about their beauty. But to my surprise, a little boy spoke calmly, which made the woman feel a bit amused. And just now, this kid said this as if he was saying hello. His tone of voice was like saying whether you had eaten or not, without any ups and downs. Thinking of the woman smiling slightly and the iceberg melting, I became more interested in this child. I'm so angry, this little brat dares to disrespect the teacher. The little girl's lungs are almost bursting with anger, and she is about to catch up with Han Xiao who has already gone far away. Nana, don't have rough hair inside. The woman frowned and stopped her actions. But Nana pouted and felt a bit aggrieved. Let's go. The woman obviously didn't take this seriously and turned around to leave. Being at the top of power, she doesn't need to be angry with a child. And at this moment, Han Xiao, who had already gone downstairs, did not know the seriousness of the sentence just made. It's not his fault, after all, the most common thing he did in his past life was assassination, and it's not an exaggeration to describe him as an assassination machine. Can he still say hello to his goal and say hello, you can go die? A true assassin has never had these flashy and cool rituals. Although he praised her for her beauty, Han Xiao had already forgotten about that beautiful figure. He is a killer, no emotions. Touching the bulging purse, Han Xiao's eyes flashed with excitement. With money, some simple assassination tools from uncertain past lives can be achieved. He is going to make a big purchase. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Great Procurement of Martial Soul City, New Books for Recommendation and Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Great Procurement of Martial Soul City, New Books for Recommendation and Collection. The door slowly pushed open, and Douluo quickly stood up and bowed respectfully to the visitor. His Highness the Pope. If Han Xiao were here, he would not believe that the stunning woman he met on the stairs would be the Pope of this martial soul hall. Elder Ghost, what's up with rushing over here? Bibi asked expressionlessly on the east side. She was supposed to guide Helena's cultivation outside, but her maid came over and told her that Ghost Douluo had an urgent matter, so she hurried back. Report to your highness, I have discovered a piece of jade in this mission, old ghost. At this point, Douluo was vaguely excited. Oh. There aren't many children who can be praised like that by Elder Ghost. Bibidong was a bit surprised. She knew very well that Douluo never liked trouble and had no plans to take in his apprenticeship. Douluo took a deep breath and recounted Han Xiao's experience in detail. Grandpa Ghost, I don't believe it. Helena didn't even think about it, said crisply. How could a child who is 1 year younger than oneself possibly kill more than 10 adults in one night? Seeing Bibidong not speaking, it seemed that he did not believe himself, and Douluo was a bit anxious. Your Excellency, how could I deceive you? Bibidong raised his hand, gesturing for Douluo to be calm and not agitated. After a while, she asked, you mean he killed a dozen people for a man to? It is obvious that Bibidong's attention is entirely focused on the ridiculous reward mentioned by Han Xiao. Yes. Douluo quickly nodded. It's a bit interesting. Bibi's mouth curled up with a faint curve. Elder Ghost, can I see that child? Bibidong spoke up and asked. That kid. Douluo looked out the window, feeling somewhat helpless. I just asked him to go out for a walk. Well, just wait for him to know whether it's a rough jade or a stubborn stone. It's easy to tell at a glance. Bibidong seemed to sense Douluo's predicament and casually picked up the jade stone placed on the table to play with. Boss, how do you sell this stone? Han Xiao played with the transparent strange crystal in his hand and casually asked. The drowsy stall owner thought it was business and quickly opened his eyes. When he saw what Han Xiao was holding, he was greatly disappointed. This thing is not for sale, it's used to press tablecloths. Little kid is playing with it. The boss waved his hand and looked impatient. Seeing that Han Xiao is a child of 5 or 6 years old, he believes that the other party is purely here to cause trouble. Placing the transparent crystal in his hand heavily on the table, Han Xiao's face turned positive and he said, give me a price. Han Xiao didn't directly pat his bulging money bag on the table, showing off his financial strength. The boss's eyes were straight, but his mouth was merciless, a gold soul coin. Upon hearing these words, Han Xiao didn't even think about it. He took the money bag back in his hand and turned around to leave. Seeing Han Xiao leave without any hesitation, the boss became anxious and said, hey, little brother, don't leave. He hasn't opened yet today, so he won't let go of the meat that's almost in his mouth. The boss rubbed his hands and caught up with Han Xiao with a smirk on his face, saying, I was just joking. Do you think a silver soul coin is worth it? Han Xiao remained silent and his footsteps quickened. Brother, stay a step, take away 10 copper coins. A hint of despair rose in the depths of the boss's heart, and he was most afraid of dealing with customers like Han Xiao. This kind of customer is like an assassin on the battlefield, decisive in killing and giving no room for bargaining. Han Xiao turned his head and said expressionlessly, "Deal." Although this transparent crystal may seem useless, it is the most important material for making simple smoke bombs, saltpeter. When potassium nitrate in saltpeter is mixed with white sugar, it can produce thick smoke. And the effect of potassium nitrate is not limited to this. If Han Xiao collects all the materials, he can even use it to make gunpowder. As the sun sets, Han Xiao, carrying large and small bags, becomes a beautiful scenery. It's not because of how arrogant he is, but because the thing Han Xiao is holding in his hand is really too strange. Transparent stones, pale yellow liquid, and even a tube of white sugar. Although Han Xiao had no expression on his face, he was very excited inside. He didn't expect that there were still quite a few things he needed in this martial soul city. So far, he has gathered all the materials for the simple smoke grenade, flash grenade, and stun grenade. Although the effects of the props made are much worse than those from previous lives, they are better than nothing and can achieve a surprising victory in critical moments. And the final destination is the blacksmith shop. Lift your feet into this terrifyingly hot place, and the sound of forging iron fills your brain. Children, this is not where you should come. A burly blacksmith, sweating profusely, saw Han Xiao's body and joked. Han Xiao ignored and placed some drawings in front of him, saying, "Can we do it?" The blacksmith had some doubts, but still opened the blueprint. After a while, the blacksmith put down the blueprint and looked at Han Xiao with a monster-like expression in his eyes. "What are you doing these things for?" He was somewhat surprised. If the smoke bomb could be a child's prank, then the effect of the stun grenade goes beyond that. Murder. Han Xiao didn't lie, he answered in detail. "I can't do it." The blacksmith returned the blueprint to Han Xiao and continued to build agricultural tools. He raised his mouth and asked Han Xiao to look at a row of farm tools on the counter. "Our blacksmith shop is only responsible for making farm tools such as hoes and shovel." However, Han Xiao did not leave and said, "You can do it." Upon hearing this, the blacksmith frowned. Although this martial soul city is large, there are only 4 blacksmiths in total, but only your family can do it, Han Xiao said calmly. The blacksmith was a bit angry, so he waved his hand and said, "Whoever's little brat dares to cause trouble, don't blame me for being impolite." This may seem like a warning, but it actually shows a sense of guilt. Han Xiao walked towards the counter filled with molds, caressing the cold molds. "Isn't that the model of agricultural tools at the bottom?" His sudden words made the blacksmith's pupils shrink, and he looked at Han Xiao again with a different look. "Sword, about 3 to 4 feet long and 1 inch wide, your length is almost the same." Han Xiao looked at the mold and said to himself, "Who the hell are you?" The blacksmith's voice was a bit more solemn. He couldn't believe that the child in front of him could accurately tell the size of the weapon. Although the sword is good, it is the king of weapons. It cares too much about the situation, kills quickly enough, and is boring. Han Xiao shook his head, seeming somewhat regretful. Upon hearing these words, the blacksmith's eyelids lifted. This little boy is definitely not as simple as he imagined. The blacksmith didn't even think about it and instinctively asked, "What about the knife?" The sword is a deadly blade that cannot be practiced unless it is used to defeat the dead. Han Xiao shook his head and continued to deny. The blacksmith was smirked and looked at Han Xiao with a mischievous expression, asking, "Can you tell me what kind of weapon can be considered a good one?" Han Xiao stretched out 2 fingers and compared, "The dagger, with the power of breaking through the army, does not cut off useless people. It is the best choice to take its head from among thousands of soldiers, to escape from the mortal world of killing, and to escape from the white blade." 1 chapter the day before signing the contract, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Test of Bibidong. New books for recommendation and collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Test of Bibidong. New books for recommendation and collection. Is there really a weapon that can surpass a martial soul? Upon hearing Han Xiao's words, the blacksmith's eyes became hot. He secretly crafted weapons to fulfill his dream of one day creating a sword to crush the martial soul. However, Han Xiao's answer disappointed him. No. Upon hearing this, the blacksmith was somewhat disappointed. But soon he felt a little relieved, not expecting to hear a lot of nonsense from this little kid. He really went crazy. However, Han Xiao's next sentence left the blacksmith standing still. But you can craft weapons that can assist the martial soul, and the martial soul will receive a qualitative improvement. There is an ancient sword called fish intestine. As the name suggests, it is soft and can enter the fish's stomach. The sword is engraved with patterns, can bend and twist, and can also be incredibly tough. Han Xiao said expressionlessly. Even if the blacksmith's imagination was too rich, he never thought of a weapon that could be hidden in the belly of a fish. Does this sword really exist in the world? The blacksmith's breathing became rapid. Han Xiao nodded lightly, but shook his head again and said, yes, there isn't. The blacksmith was surrounded by clouds and mist by Han Xiao. The fish intestine was crafted by a divine craftsman, but the divine craftsman has already died. The creator of fish intestines was O Yezi, who had died for 1,000 to 800 years. And this divine sword mysteriously disappeared with the departure of O Yezi. The blacksmith was a bit lost in spirit. He died without regret, capable of crafting a famous sword. But in the world of Douluo continent, where blacksmiths are extremely unfriendly, how could he create it? Han Xiao looked at the blacksmith, his voice calm but not lacking in penetrating power. In this world, only I know the method of making fish intestines. During an assassination mission, Han Xiao was chased by countless experts after killing his target, and ultimately had no choice but to jump down the waterfall. In an extremely secretive cave, he obtained the blueprint for making fish intestines. This sentence is like sparks scattered into a haystack, making the blacksmith's eyes hot. If I could create this sword, my iron ox would die without regret. The blacksmith looked at Han Xiao with a burning gaze and said in a muffled voice. Han Xiao looked at the blacksmith and shook his head. If you want to make fish intestines, you need the tin from Qijin Mountain and the copper from Rui Creek. I have never heard of these two places before. Han Xiao rolled his eyes, haven't you ever heard of it? Both of these places are located on the future parent star, and these materials are even rarer. I will pay attention to similar materials, and if I find them, I will let you forge this sword. In his past life, Han Xiao once hired the world's strongest blacksmith, but he still couldn't reproduce the power of fish intestines. The reason is simply that these rare materials have undergone internal changes due to their age being too old. After crossing this continent, Han Xiao saw a glimmer of hope. Here, everything is possible. He wanted to see how powerful this brave sword was. The blacksmith no longer looked at Han Xiao, and the intensity of making agricultural tools seemed to have increased a bit. I'll take it a month later. Han Xiao's eyes lit up and he spoke up, here's the blueprint for you. The blacksmith sneered and shook his head, I've memorized it all in my mind. The thing you want is not complicated to make. After all, the blueprint is the simplest method for making smoke bombs. If one really wants to create a small, rich, and poisonous smoke bomb from the past, it is impossible with the technology of this era. You deserve it. Han Xiao thought for a moment, took out a golden soul coin and placed it on a nearby table, then turned around and left. A golden soul coin is more than enough to make these things, and it can be said that Han Xiao is quite generous. Looking at the thin and small figure, Iron Bull smiled slightly, and a hint of heat flashed in his eyes. I hope you can fulfill my dream, kid. Douluo continent is extremely cruel, and a person's future is already established at the age of 6. Without soul power, you will be an ordinary person for your entire life. But Iron Bull doesn't believe in fate. He has always hoped to create divine weapons with his hands that are no less than martial souls. Returning to the place agreed with Douluo, Han Xiao pushed the door open and entered. He looked at Douluo standing respectfully on the side, as well as the woman sitting, somewhat surprised. Have you just met this woman? If Bibidong knew that Han Xiao had already left her behind, he wouldn't know what he would think. Douluo saw Han Xiao standing foolishly and walked over quickly. Why don't you pay your respects to His Highness the Pope? The woman in front of him, who is so beautiful that she is beyond measure, is actually the Pope. A hint of surprise flashed in Han Xiao's heart. In his past life, he had also taken over the assassination of the Pope, all of whom were elderly men in their 50s. He had never seen such a young and beautiful woman belonging to the Pope before. I have met His Highness the Pope. Han Xiao slightly bowed and symbolically lowered his body. Huliena recognized Han Xiao as the little rascal and pointed at him, angrily scolding, "It's actually you." Upon hearing these words, Douluo frowned and said, "Your Highness, has there been any misunderstanding?" If Ghost Douluo found out that Han Xiao was so stiff in his boasting, he might be frightened and turn into a ghost. "It's nothing." Bibidong shook his head slightly and stopped Huliena, who wanted to file a complaint. She looked at Han Xiao for the second time and became even more interested. The child's eyes did not show the childishness that this age should have. Those dark gray eyes had no emotion, like sculptures from the Renaissance period. "Han Xiao, I heard you have more than 10 lives in your hands." Bibidong spoke up and asked. Han Xiao nodded and remained silent. Bibidong smiled and said, "Since that's the case, you can leave. Our martial soul palace does not accept murderers." Upon hearing this, Douluo became anxious. "His Highness the Pope." He quickly said, although Han Xiao killed someone, there was a reason for it. After speaking, he turned his head to look at Han Xiao, hoping that the latter would speak up and explain. However, to his disappointment, Han Xiao shook his head and said, kill it for no reason." Huliena was dumbfounded. She couldn't believe that the little boy had over a dozen lives in his hands. The teacher next to him looked cold. Bibidong remained calm and self-assured. "Do you know that it was his fault for defiling that woman, but you killed his entire family without their involvement?" At this moment, the pressure of being the Pope instantly solidified the air in the room. Even Ghost Douluo is not impressive. However, only Han Xiao was not afraid at all. "I kill, only seeking results, not asking right or wrong." "Okay, one who doesn't ask right or wrong." Bibidong was extremely angry and laughed back. This is truly a free and easy statement. Huliena lowered her head and dared not speak, knowing that her teacher was really angry. "Since I don't ask right or wrong, can I kill you now?" At this moment, Bibidong had a murderous intent in his eyes. Han Xiao met his cold and beautiful eyes and slowly spoke, "If you want, naturally you can." His keen sixth sense told him that this beautiful woman was even more terrifying than Ghost Douluo. If she is willing, she will definitely not be able to escape. Han Xiao is not afraid of death, nor can he be afraid of death. Once he is afraid of death, he will lose the power of an assassin. And he, who had already obtained his PhD in psychology from the University of Toronto, did not see Bibidong really wanting to kill himself. If you really want to kill someone, even if your body is well hidden, your eyes will not deceive. Although the terrifying and murderous aura emanating from all over made people's liver and gallbladder tremble. But in her incredibly beautiful eyes, there was a hint of more like a test. Bibi stared expressionlessly at Han Xiao from the east, feeling a bit shocked when he saw that the latter had not changed at all. How could this child not be afraid when facing her murderous intent? You should know that she has cleared the killing capital, and even Ghost Douluo dare not carry that terrifying killing intent for long. Thinking of this, she became increasingly interested in this child with a worldly expression. After a moment, she spoke up and said, "Nana, let's take him to live for now." As for whether we can stay in the Martial Soul Hall, I need to think again. Hulina pouted, as if a little unwilling, but still did not dare to disobey the teacher's order. Come with me. She glanced at Han Xiao and led the way. I am writing this chapter to say, don't provoke the protagonist. If the protagonist is anxious, the whole family will suffer. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Muddy Sky Star Map. New books for recommendation and collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Muddy Sky Star Map. New books for recommendation and collection. Hello. Hulina turned her head to look at Han Xiao, who was following behind her, and finally couldn't help it. The little girl stuttered and said, "Can you teach me how to transfer that gold coin in your hand?" It is obvious that she still cares about Han Xiao's skill. Han Xiao gave her a faint glance and said coldly, "It's a unique and unparalleled skill, I won't pass it on." Upon hearing these words, Hulina was furious. "Hey, can't you be more generous? I'm begging you like this, what's wrong with teaching me?" Hulina followed behind Han Xiao like a chattering sparrow. Han Xiao's eyebrows gradually deepened and his steps quickened. "Hey, don't leave." Hulina pursued him relentlessly and did not intend to let him go. After muttering for a while, Han Xiao suddenly stood still, turned around and looked expressionlessly at this annoying girl. "Are you willing?" Hulina thought she had read it successfully, and a hint of anticipation flashed on her face. Han Xiao's face remained expressionless and he spoke lightly, "I'll teach you something more exciting." The little girl nodded without even thinking and agreed directly. "Keep an eye on my hand." Han Xiao spread his right hand with distinct joints and placed it in front of Hulina. "Okay." Hulina was actually a bit nervous, her gaze fixed on Han Xiao's right hand, not daring to be careless. "I see it clearly." Han Xiao spoke up, his wrist dancing rapidly. Before Hulina could react, a dazzling blade suddenly appeared in Han Xiao's hand. This is still what he came out of the blacksmith's shop. Han Xiao's wrist swung, and in the blink of an eye, the blade landed on Hulina's neck. Feeling the icy sharpness emanating from his neck, he looked at the murderous look in the eyes of the young man across from him. At this moment, Hulina seemed to realize that the boy in front of her had killed more than 10 people. "What are you doing?" The little girl's voice trembled slightly, and this was the first time she had been treated like this. Han Xiao secretly exerted force, and the blade in his hand pressed a red mark on the fair and pink swan neck. "Do you dare to kill me?" Hulina's voice trembled slightly, and she seemed to be at a loss all over her body. Han Xiao's lips curved into a cold smile, and he looked into the darkness not far away. He said coldly, "Guess if I dare." Hulina swallowed her saliva and dared not speak. The assassin suddenly realized that this boy would really kill herself. From now on, lead the way obediently and not say a word. Han Xiao issued an ultimatum to Hulina. "If you dare to make noise again, the blade in my hand will sink 4 centimeters in, which happens to be your main artery." After saying these words, Han Xiao put away his blade and looked coldly at Hulina, who was sitting on the ground limp. After the 2 children left, Han Xiao slowly walked out of the shadow where he was looking. "His Highness the Pope, this son must not stay." Douluo's face was gloomy, and his voice exuded a murderous aura. Since the 2 of them left, Bibidong has been secretly observing Han Xiao. Douluo's face was gloomy. "Lao Ju, don't be too lenient." If it weren't for Douluo blocking earlier, Douluo would have rushed forward long ago. He was just about to kill Nana. Chrysanthemum Douluo said coldly. For Hulina, Yueguan has always favored her and naturally couldn't watch this scene. Seeing the 2 of them arguing again, Bibidong coldly said, "Because a child has been arguing like this, why are you still like a title Douluo?" The 2 of them obediently closed their mouths and looked at Bibidong. "He found us." Bibidong spoke up, somewhat incredulous. Impossible. The moon fell silent and screamed in surprise. How could a 5-year-old child possibly discover the hidden title Douluo in the dark? Elder Jew, are you questioning me? Bibidong half turned his head and gave a faint glance at Yue Guan. Just like this, Yue Guan trembled all over and quickly explained, I dare not. After finally settling down, Han Xiaopan sat on the soft big bed and breathed a slight sigh of relief. As Bibidong said, he had already discovered that the three of Bibidong were secretly inspecting. Han Xiao is gambling, he needs to know the bottom line of Bibidong's tolerance for himself. This woman is a bit puzzling to him. From Bibidong's recent performance, it seems that she is not clear about this woman's attitude towards her. What exactly is this mysterious and noble woman thinking? Shaking his head, Han Xiao stopped thinking too much. At least from his current performance, Bibidong has no intention of killing himself. Putting aside these irrelevant matters, Han Xiao closed his eyes and meditated. His body slowly turned semi-transparent. Above the skin, it was like a sky full of stars, and a milky white mist was swallowed in the nose. The cloud-like tattoo on Han Xiao's body was slowly changing, and in the end, the 7 twinkling stars seemed to be connected together. At this moment, Han Xiao seems to be integrated with nature. He slowly opened his eyes, with a purple mist spreading in their sockets. It's done. The cloud map eventually turned into a tattoo and fell onto the lower abdomen. The 7 stars connected above are undoubtedly the Big Dipper. A fiery expression flashed in Han Xiao's eyes. The reason why he was able to stand in the position of the first assassin in his past life and become a terrifying glutton is also closely related to his own adventures. By a stroke of luck, Han Xiao discovered a set of techniques called the Hun Tian Xing Tu on the broken slate. He has browsed countless classics but has never found the origin of this martial art. What shocked him was that after practicing this technique, his body underwent a shocking change. If you want to reach the height of the 7th layer in your previous life, I don't know how long you will have to practice here. In his past life, he had reached the 7th level of his terrifying talent and relentless efforts. At this level, one can already turn the stars into their own, greatly improve their 6th sense, and even predict the opponent's movements in advance. Han Xiao even suspected that if he had reached the terrifying existence of the 9th layer of Ziwei, would he be able to know everything about the world? At that time, he could already foresee that his death was approaching step by step. Han Xiao is confident that after crossing the Douluo continent, he can touch the mysterious threshold. After all, he didn't start practicing until he was 15 years old in his previous life, which was 10 years later. Moreover, there are more experiences and insights from past lives, which are priceless. After exercising his body, Han Xiao only felt unusually comfortable. The first level of the Huntian star map, the Beidou, is just an entry-level skill, but it greatly enhances his senses. This is also the reason why he was able to assassinate more than 10 people and detect Bibidong and others with the power of one person. Once we break through to the first level, can we use the move? Han Xiao pondered to himself, with a hint of warmth in his eyes. He needs to accelerate his cultivation progress. After arriving at the Martial Soul Hall, seeing this top-notch presence on the mainland gave Han Xiao a sense of crisis. Time flies, 3 months pass by in a flash. During this period, only Gue Douluo came to visit him a few times. Under the arrangement of Douluo, his daily food also got rid of the dry mantu, and his physique quickly recovered. At least now, he can no longer be called a weak chicken, even though he is still as thin as a bamboo pole. But if you take off his clothes, you will find that his muscle lines are extremely solid, as if containing extremely terrifying explosive power. Deeply exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Han Xiao opened his eyes. He moved his body and got up to go to the blacksmith's shop. The time agreed with the blacksmith is almost up, he needs to go and retrieve the smoke bomb. We have already signed the contract, brothers, rest assured to check it out. After changing the status, we will update it twice a day. We recommend collecting it once. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Challenge of the Golden Generation. New book for recommendation and collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Challenge of the Golden Generation. New books for recommendation and collection. Arriving at the blacksmith's shop, the sound of forging iron instantly filled my mind. Are you here, kid? Iron Bull seemed to be able to feel Han Xiao's arrival without even needing his eyes, focusing on forging iron. I'm here to pick up the goods. Han Xiao's face remained calm and he spoke lightly. Upon hearing these words, Iron Bull stopped his movements and said, "How long has it been? I thought you didn't plan to come and take it." As he spoke, he led Han Xiao towards the inner room. Forgotten the time for cultivation, sorry. Here, got it. Iron Bull scooped out a box from the messy pile of items and placed it in front of Han Xiao. Looking at the assassination props lying quietly inside, Han Xiao's eyes flashed with a hint of heat. There were much more than he expected, and each one was of excellent condition. I've looked at your recipe and it's not really anything valuable. When I have nothing to do, I make it for fun. It seems that he sensed Han Xiao's idea, and the blacksmith blushed, turned red and explained. Han Xiao held a smoke bomb in his hand and threw it heavily to the ground. The instantly strong smoke makes people unable to open their eyes. You boy, go outside his mother to test, don't do it in my shop. Iron Bull quickly covered his mouth and nose and cursed loudly. Sorry, I forgot for a moment. Suddenly, Han Xiao's words startled the blacksmith into a cold sweat. I don't know when this kid actually got behind him. The door was suddenly pushed open, and a group of apprentices rushed in. Boss, is it on fire? They were holding buckets in their hands, looking anxious. Hurry up, go open the window. Iron Bull yelled and cursed angrily. When everyone saw that Iron Bull was fine, they breathed a sigh of relief and quickly opened the window to disperse the smoke. It took about a minute for the smoke to completely dissipate. At this time, Han Xiao had already disappeared without a trace. Looking at the 2 golden soul coins lying quietly on the table, the blacksmith smiled unhappily and said, "This stinky kid really doesn't want to owe anyone." Han Xiao, who had left the blacksmith shop, walked briskly through the crowd. In fact, he didn't like to use these things in his previous life. With the rapid advancement of technology, assassins have gradually divided into conservative and reformist factions. The conservative faction follows the will of ancient Greek ancestors, focusing on physical combat and stealth. The reformists emphasize the use of firearms knowledge and various high-tech assassination props, and the two can be said to be incompatible. So, which faction does Han Xiao belong to? Sorry, Han Xiao holds an extremely high position between the two and has become the object of learning for countless assassin descendants. Walking all the way to the door of the cabin, Han Xiao stopped and frowned slightly. Someone has come before. He gave a faint glance at the strands of hair that had fallen to the ground, which he had caught in the crack of the door before leaving. Is it Bibidong? Han Xiao's heart suddenly became alert. No, if it were her, she would never have infiltrated the room in this way. Moreover, since I am only a 5-year-old child, how could I receive such attention from the Pope? Gently bending down, Han Xiao stepped step by step on the soft grass, even his breathing seemed to disappear. Hiding is like a common occurrence for him. Hey, where did the person go? Suddenly, a tender voice came from the inner room. Nana, let's go back. That brat may be hiding and not daring to come out. A childish boy's voice sounded, and the 3 words, little brat, came out of his mouth, which was very funny. Yan, you don't know, that kid is really fierce. The girl spoke out to refute. Humph, he hasn't awakened his martial soul yet, so he might be a waste. The evil moon snorted coldly on the side, seeming somewhat unconvinced. Han Xiao leaned against the door, quietly looking at the three children with their backs to him, and coldly said, "Who are you?" The sudden sound startled the three of them, and they quickly turned around to find Han Xiao looking coldly at them. "Are you a fucking ghost? You scared me." Yen noticed that he had just shown timidity in front of the girl he liked and roared angrily. Han Xiao gave him a faint glance and said coldly, "I don't know if it's a ghost, but it's you three who sneak into someone else's room. I think it's a ghost." Upon hearing this, Helena spat out her tongue, feeling a bit embarrassed. "You kid, look for a fight." Yen blushed with anger from Han Xiao's counterattack and roared angrily. The strong child standing next to him took a step forward and looked down at Han Xiao from a high position. "Are you brought by Grandpa Ghost?" There was a hint of rebellion in his eyes, and when he saw Han Xiao as thin as a bamboo pole, he sneered. "No matter who brought it, since you have come to the Martial Soul Hall, you must abide by the rules of the Martial Soul Hall." Seeing Han Xiao not speaking, Xiao spoke up and said, "We three came a year earlier than you, so you should listen to us." Han Xiao smiled coldly and said, "Did you set the rules for the Martial Soul Hall?" Upon hearing these words, Evil Moon was momentarily speechless. This big hat, Evil Moon, obviously dares not wear it. Evil Moon, why bother talking to him and let him know whose fist is big? Yen was restless and his eyes were about to burst into flames. After all, they are still children, and in their eyes, whoever fights badly is the king of children. Moreover, Han Xiao's indifferent expression made Yen very unhappy. Han Xiao glanced at the three of them and turned around to leave. "Kid, are you scared?" Yen would not miss this opportunity and quickly mocked. Han Xiao stood outside and said expressionlessly, "The room is too small, don't smash anything." Upon hearing these words, Yen Qi laughed back and said, "Okay, since you're going to fight outside, then come." The three of them walked outside, and Helena was somewhat worried, but had a faint excitement. Only she knew Han Xiao's strength and had long wanted to see him show off. "You guys come together." Han Xiao looked at the three people and said coldly. "Little brat, hitting your old man alone is enough." Yen couldn't bear Han Xiao's arrogance, so he took a step and rushed forward directly. Han Xiao's pupils narrowed, but he underestimated the child in front of him. Compared to the few strong men he had killed, the strength of both sides was clearly not on the same level. He is truly a genius cultivated by the Martial Soul Hall. Looking at Yen, who was rushing like a small mountain, Han Xiao moved. On one side of his body, he unexpectedly met Yen, who was about to fall into his arms. Seeking death. Yen was furious and punched loudly. Han Xiao's reaction was extremely fast, he bent down directly and grabbed Yen's tiger waist. With a punch in the air, Yen reacted and was about to elbow Han Xiao hard on the back. Han Xiaoxi remained calm and fiercely swept her right leg towards Yen's supporting foot. Then, with both hands exerting force, she threw Yen out directly. This fall has dealt Yen a considerable blow. After all, there is no complete martial arts system in this world. To fight against Yen's reckless punches, it only requires the simplest hug and fall to solve. Han Xiao stood in place, slowly extending his right hand and hooking his finger at the Evil Moon watching the battle, saying, "I told you, you two are together." Xiao's expression turned cold, and the boy in front of her was too arrogant. Since that's the case, don't blame me for not following the rules. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Terror of Smoke Bombs, Beat Evil Moon Yen. Recommended. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Terror of Smoke Bombs, Beat Evil Moon Yen. Seeking recommendation, seeking collection. Evil Moon snorted coldly and joined the battle. 2-1, two boys sandwiched Han Xiao in the middle, one in front and one behind. No matter what you think, Han Xiao seems to be the one who is bound to lose. However, Han Xiao didn't seem to think so. He turned his head and rushed directly towards Yen, who had just regained his breath. Take advantage of his illness to kill him. Han Xiao tightened his right arm and charged towards Yan's face with a jab. You can't imagine it. Xiao didn't expect the other party to suddenly take a challenge and rush forward to obstruct Han Xiao. But his speed is not as fast as Han Xiao's fist. Yan felt flustered and had to block his arm in front of his face. However, after a moment, he did not feel any pain. Moving away from his palm, he saw Han Xiao staring at him expressionlessly with a cold expression in his eyes. And that fist is right in front of me. The terrifying gaze made Yan tremble all over. Xiao arrived and saw Han Xiao's fist stop in front of Yan, intending to firmly lock him in with his physical advantage. But Han Xiao moved, his body like a stretched bow, his hands supporting the ground, completely stretching out, his thighs taut, spinning and kicking out. It seemed like there were long eyes behind the head, and this blow was so fast that Evil Moon caught her off guard and swept directly towards her knee. With a loud roar, Han Xiao didn't leave his hand, and the intense pain made Xiao kneel directly on the ground. Ah! With a scream, Evil Moon only felt the pain of tearing her knee. He wanted to get up, but found that his legs seemed to have lost control. Why hit the knee? Although the knee may seem protected by the patella, it is one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body. This blow is enough to paralyze half of a normal person's body. I'm going to kill you. Yan saw that his good brother's face was now colorless, his eyes seemed to be spewing fire, and his murderous spirit burst out completely in his heart. He let out a roar and directly released his martial soul Flame Lord, and the temperature around him instantly became scorching hot. Don't fight anymore. Seeing the situation escalate, Helena also knew that it was not the time to watch the play, so she anxiously persuaded. Go to hell. Yan, who transformed into the Flame Lord, was covered in lava armor all over his body, and his figure became even taller. Looking at Han Xiao who was within reach, he suddenly punched the back of his head. And with the distance between the two, even Han Xiao could not escape. However, the scene that followed left Helena stunned. Han Xiao seemed to have long eyes at the back of his head, and even before Yan could punch him, he lowered his head first. I predicted your prediction. This is the terrifying aspect of the Huntian star map. With a punch in the air, Yan let out a roar and punched Han Xiao like a storm. Han Xiao's movements were even more incredible. His body shook rapidly, not significantly. However, this extremely fast shaking was even more exquisite, avoiding every punch from Yan. The howling fist wind rubbed Han Xiao's cheeks with pain, but his movements were not slow at all. Are you a fucking mouse? Yan roared out of breath, feeling extremely angry. Han Xiao ignored his provocation and suddenly threw something onto the ground, shrouded in smoke all around. This sudden change made Yan panic and quickly retreat, but he stumbled over something and fell heavily to the ground. Following that was a chaotic punch, with countless punches hitting Yan's entire body like a gust of wind and rain. At first, Yan struggled to parry, but as Han Xiao's fist became increasingly fierce, his hands eventually collapsed on the ground. Don't, stop fighting. Yan's voice gradually weakened and became depressed. In this thick fog, he had no strength to fight back and could only be beaten. When the smoke dissipated, Yan had already turned into a pig's head and lay unconscious on the ground. And Han Xiao, except for his clothes becoming a bit messy, had no wounds on his body. I give up. Seeing the man with a cold face slowly walking towards her, Helena quickly raised her hands. Han Xiao gave her a cold glance, didn't speak, and walked towards his own room. Wait. At this moment, the Evil Moon kneeling on the ground suddenly spoke. Do you still want to fight? Han Xiao turned his head and looked at him expressionlessly. Xiao felt a wave of fear in her heart and quickly said, my legs can't move anymore. The sweep of Han Xiao's legs just now made his legs lose consciousness. Take a break and you'll recover. Han Xiao glanced at his swollen knee and said calmly. His strength is still too weak, and in his past life, evil moon may be permanently paralyzed. Upon hearing this, Xiao breathed a sigh of relief. Hulina looked at Han Xiaoyuan's figure and mustered the courage to ask, I know we shouldn't have entered your room, but there's something we can do to find you. If there's anything, just say it. Han Xiao didn't turn his head and spoke up. Hulina stomped her feet angrily at the other person's attitude and said, Ghost Grandpa said, it will be your age to awaken your martial soul in another month. Is it a month? Upon hearing these words, Han Xiao was slightly stunned. Han Xiao felt a faint anticipation. Is there anything else? After thinking for a while, Han Xiao asked. After hesitating for a moment, Hulina cautiously asked, also, your gold coin. Don't even think about it. Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Han Xiao. It's not that he doesn't want to teach, but that teaching is too troublesome and Han Xiao doesn't have the energy. For him, the current time is very precious and must be focused on cultivation. Oh. Hulina shrunk her mouth and her eyes immediately turned red. A strong sense of grievance spread throughout the body. Since she arrived at the Martial Soul Hall, although she was an orphan, everyone in the Martial Soul Hall was responsive to her every request. But the younger boy in front of her didn't even want to teach her a little trick. Hey! Han Xiao sighed. I saw a golden soul coin appearing in his hand at some point, dancing rapidly between his fingertips. Wow! Hulina grew her mouth and stared at Han Xiao's fingers without blinking. This time, Han Xiao's gold coin speed was not fast, as if he could make Hulina see the movements clearly. I will only demonstrate once. Upon hearing this, Hulina nodded with unprecedented nervousness. Han Xiao's hand speed kept increasing, and at some point, he unexpectedly added another gold coin. 2 gold coins seemed to have been infused with soul, and they danced tango on the stage on the back of Han Xiao's hand. The last silent note fell, and 2 gold coins rolled in the air, firmly landing in Han Xiao's hands, ending the song. Too powerful. Hulina let out a heartfelt admiration, her eyes lit up with little stars. Han Xiao turned to look at Hulina with a cold gaze and said, I have taught you what you want to learn. Whether you can learn it or not is up to you. Hulina nodded happily and was about to speak, but Han Xiao's next words were like a bowl of cold water. There won't be much to do in the future, don't disturb me. The coldness in his eyes contained a distance of millions of miles. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Martial Soul Awakening. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Martial Soul Awakening. Han Xiao's idea was very simple, and after teaching Hulina the tricks, he was able to save a bit of trouble. As for whether he will fall in love with the agile little girl in front of him, it is impossible. At least in his past life, he was also a top-tier assassin who had seen various socialites and princesses, and even assassinated a wealthy young lady from a certain country. He wants to be able to fall in love with a little girl who hasn't even grown hair. Part-time work is a fantasy. Bibidong, in the darkness, shook his head and sighed as he saw Hulina leaving in a daze. The path of the 3 golden generation is too smooth, making them fall can actually be helpful. As for Han Xiao, it seems a bit out of place. Bibidong thought to himself like this. As Elder Chrysanthemum said, this young man is not a loyal hunting dog, but a lone wolf. A month has flown by. During this month, Han Xiao continuously practiced the Muddy Sky star map and honed his body. On this day, Ghost Douluo arrived as promised. Little one, you've grown taller. Gue Douluo greeted Han Xiao with a stiff greeting. After all, his social skills are completely lacking. Han Xiao glanced at him but didn't speak. Do you know what day it is today? Douluo felt a slight awkwardness in the air and changed the topic. Martial Soul Awakening. Han Xiao's face was calm, without any sense of tension. Douluo gave a gloomy smile and said, what kind of martial soul do you want? Before Han Xiao could answer, he muttered to himself, like you, the agility attack type martial soul is the best choice, preferably with some stealth effect. If you can be the same martial soul as me, that would be great. If Han Zhao's martial soul is also a ghost, he can personally cultivate the ghost Douluo, which can definitely save many detours. Although Gue Douluo thought so, Han Xiao was unwilling. He doesn't want his martial soul to be so underworld. What's wrong with your finger? Gue Douluo suddenly noticed that Han Zhao's index and middle fingers were slightly swollen, and the surface was covered in dark red congestion. Han Xiao silently hid his fingers and looked at the small mountain-high ice packs and anti-inflammatory drugs piled up on the table. Seeing Han Xiao speechless, Gue Douluo awkwardly coughed and said, "So, have you ever thought about your martial soul?" "I have thought about it." Han Xiao did not tell Gue Douluo about his desired martial soul. His eyes sparkled with confidence. Martial Soul Hall. By the time the two arrived, the main hall was already filled with 7 or 8 young girls. They appear to be about the same age as Han Xiao. But the expressions on the faces of these children are mostly nervous and panicked, with a very small portion being excited. This is completely different from Han Zhao's plain expression. Has His Highness the Pope also arrived? Gue Douluo, who was following Han Xiao, looked towards the second-floor stand and said in surprise. Han Xiao looked up and saw that the peerless beauty of the Ming dynasty Bibidong was sitting upright. And the trio who came to provoke Han Xiao was standing behind Bibidong, with a soft and feminine man that Han Xiao had never seen before. The man clearly noticed his gaze and narrowed his eyes. This person wants to kill me. Han Xiao felt a chill in his heart, sensing his hidden murderous aura. Bibidong glanced lightly at the gentleman behind him, unsure of what he had said. The man quickly lowered his head and stopped looking at Han Xiao. Han Xiao also withdrew his gaze and remained calm in his heart. Soldiers come to block, water comes to cover the earth. Is it strange to come down from the papal hall? Han Xiao asked Ghost Douluo calmly. Gue Douluo nodded lightly and patiently explained, His Highness the Pope is very resourceful and usually does not appear in such occasions. The Martial Soul Hall is so large, although it places great importance on newcomers, it is just a matter of browsing through the results and highlighting the key children to be trained. This is the first time I have personally come to watch the awakening of martial souls like this. Children, I am your first mentor, Barak, and also your guide. At this moment, an old man wearing a long robe in the style of the Martial Soul Hall, with a head full of grayish-white, slowly walked out. He has a warm and approachable spring breeze, which instantly calms down many children's tense emotions. Barak looked at the children and continued, You are the children of the Martial Soul Temple, inheriting the excellent lineage of the family. I believe that in the near future, you will definitely become the backbone of the Martial Soul Temple. Of course, even if you don't have the talent to learn martial souls, there's no need to be discouraged. The various industries in the Martial Soul Palace will also become your rich choices. The monthly expenses of soul masters are too high, so they naturally need an economic foundation to maintain them, and a large number of apprentices flood into various industries every year in the Martial Soul City. Seeing everyone holding their breath, Barak smiled slightly and said, Let's start. Everyone queue up in an orderly manner and call the names to come forward. As soon as the words fell, Barak's martial soul was released, and his white hair turned into tangled vines. And that already aged face also became like bark, with its body expanding several times and transforming into a tree-like figure. On his side, there are 5 soul rings floating, white, yellow, yellow, purple, and purple. Although the configuration is extremely low, he is also a soul king. First, Gu Chen. Barak's voice became even thicker. A thin and malnourished little boy walked up nervously. Don't be nervous, relax. Barak arranged the formation according to routine operations and led the boy to the formation eye. Feel the changes inside your body with your heart. Barak spoke softly. Suddenly, a golden light shield enveloped the boy. Extend your right hand. The boy didn't dare to be careless and quickly extended his right hand. In an instant, a shrunken pan sheep appeared in the center of his palm. Beast martial soul, Pan Yang. Barak said softly, "Come, put your right hand on top of the crystal ball." After a moment, Barak seemed somewhat surprised. Innate soul power level 4, slightly inferior martial soul quality, but can become a soul master. Upon hearing these words, the little boy's face immediately became ecstatic. No matter what the martial soul is, at least he now has the qualification to become a soul master. Next. Barak's face remained unchanged, and the second boy walked forward. One by one, the children completed the test, and most of their soul power was at level 4 or 5. Occasionally, 1 or 2 levels 6 or 7 appeared, and they were directly taken down by the attendants. Why are most of them weapons and martial souls? Han Xiao, who had been observing all along, suddenly asked Gue Douluo beside him. Except for Gu Chen, the first to awaken the Pan Yang, most children's martial souls are weapons such as sickles and iron bars. Gue Douluo smiled slightly and said, "Relatively speaking, beast martial souls are rarer than weapon martial souls, but this is not absolute. Among the martial souls of weapons, there are also beings who are far more powerful than beast martial souls, and there are 2 major sects in the upper 3 sects that are both martial souls of weapons." Han Zhao's mind moved and he remembered the small hammer and pagoda on Elder Gedoluo's order. Today's company team building, the author took 30,000 steps and lost all his soul. It's just 1 chapter, starting tomorrow with 2 daily updates. End of this chapter.